Welcome to Sparks of History, where Jewish history and world history meet. We are extremely pleased to have with us today Professor Ronnie Perelis. Professor Perelis is Associate Professor of Sephardic Studies at the Bernard Revel Graduate School of Jewish Studies at Yeshiva University. Professor Perelis's writings on Sephardic history investigates the dynamics of religious transformation within the context of the crypto-Jewish experience. And as part of this very important research, Professor Perelis has authored a book titled Blood and Faith, Family and Identity in the Early Modern Sephardic Atlantic. And today we will be discussing the fascinating topic of Inquisition, crypto-Jews, and the incredible religious anthology and the story behind religious anthology of Louis Carvajal the Younger. And again, Professor Perelis, thank you so much for joining us today. Most appreciated.
It's really a pleasure. Thank you. It's good to be here and happy to discuss something an individual that I've lived with for over 20 years okay. in all sorts of ways. Okay. So yeah.
We will hopefully, and I'm sure get to know that individual. Okay. Before we get to the individual, just very briefly, Spanish Inquisition, its timeline, mandate, and scope.
Yeah, thank you. At YU, both as an undergrad course and as a graduate course, I teach a full semester on the Inquisition. It's something that scholars in a serious form in the 19th century already have been really interested in. It's this complex, large institution that affected so many aspects of society and culture, politics, and obviously religious life. And so it's a big topic, and I'm happy that you start with the Spanish Inquisition. Inquisition has an earlier history. It starts with the church itself as a way of investigating heresy. And that's the important point. Inquisition is interested in Christians who are believing or acting on false beliefs, right? So the interest is not in sinners, right? The Inquisition never shut down a brothel. It's concerned with people who had wrong ideas about the faith and who acted on those wrong ideas in different ways. And so it pre-existed what we call the Spanish Inquisition. Spanish Inquisition is unique because it develops to react to one very particular heresy. And that heresy was the heresy of recent converts to Christianity who were Jewish in origin, who were seen as backsliding, returning to their Judaism. And that was the heresy of Judaizing, where a Christian embraces Judaism in addition to their Christianity. So that's kind of the legal understanding. And so there was such a perceived problem of this phenomenon amongst the newly converted Jews who became Christians that the Spanish crown, Ferdinand and Isabella, appealed to the Pope to establish a unique national inquisition that would be almost like a partnership of church and state, where the crown would be the ones appointing the inquisitors. The inquisitors obviously would be priests, priests and monks, and it was focused specifically on the issue of Judaizing. And this was established in 1478. Well, they were allowed in 1478, and then by 1481 it was working. And this was in what was known as, what we could call Spain. It's more or less in the geographic boundaries of modern day Spain. It's really two kingdoms, Aragon and Castile, and those two kingdoms were run by Ferdinand from Aragon and Isabella from Castile, and they came together. So that's the Spanish Inquisition. And it came out of another larger phenomenon of history in Spain, which I think a lot of people don't know about. People know about the expulsion in 1492, But one of the main things which drove the expulsion was a series of massive riots in 1391. And people who know something about the history of Jews in Spain know that, although it wasn't a picnic, nowhere, in pre-modern life, the Jews have it good and easy without complications. But Spain was relatively a place where Jews prospered, where Jews were integrated into their society, and where Jews did not face usual regular violence because of their Judaism. And in 1391, there is this explosion of violent attacks on Jews that starts in the south and spreads throughout the country. And by the end of the summer, you have thousands and thousands of Jews who have converted to Catholicism to save their lives, for the most part. And so this creates this very large population of conversos, of converts, which does not assimilate easily into the Spanish body politic, which has trouble what becomes known as the old Christians, right? The ones who never converted, they resent them, they treat them differently, they enact discriminatory rules against them. And notice, these aren't Jews anymore from a Catholic perspective. These are fellow Christians who are seen with suspicion, are seen with disdain, are seen with all sorts of negative stereotypes, often very Jewish sounding stereotypes. And the Inquisition came as a way of saying, okay, we're going to separate the good converts from the bad converts. We'll separate the bad, the bad heretical ones from the good ones. So that comes in 1480. Notice, only about 11 years later do we get to the expulsion. So there is a relationship between the two. But I work hard with my students for them to not, to differentiate between the two, because the expulsion was about Jews and the Inquisition is about former Jews. And from a Jewish perspective, as we can look at those converts as still Jews. In fact, it was divided amongst the great Chachamim of the time and the Jews themselves. How do you look at those people, right? My second cousin who converted, do I still see him as a cousin? What about my father? What about my child? So it's more complicated than a clear line between a convert and a Jew. There are all these interconnected pieces, but from the point of view of the Inquisition, they're Christians who are behaving badly, right? So that's a little bit